Hello everyone. Phoenix61 here with your World of Warships Legends shenanigans slash Halloween event guide here today. So for 2025 Halloween event, it is exactly the same thing as it was last year. So I originally wasn't planning on doing a new video for this. I did post sort of a little bit of a strategy guide, especially with battleships. From last year, I reposted that in my sort of my community slash post section, so you could go check that one out. It's easy to find if you scroll through my YouTube posts for recently. But people, I was playing it again this week because there is a reason to try and play through it. The rewards overall are kind of lacking, so yeah, but anyway, so when you sign in, right, you can tab between, on Xbox, it's the bumpers between the various difficulty levels. When you beat it on hard mode, you do get a skin for the campaign ship, the current campaign ship that is Halloween themed. But there's not much reason, in my opinion, to try and beat it at all on insane mode. Your reward for your first win would be a Halloween chest, which they're okay, right? Like, they're fine. But in the missions tabs, right, there is, missions here like this for each ship type. These rewards are literally just the Halloween camouflages and a symbol once you complete them. And then this one for this week, when you complete it, this trick or fleet does give you a coupon. I kind of don't like that it doesn't really tell you from here what that coupon is for. But since I've completed it, I will show you, right? But these aren't too easy, right? And you notice the hardest difficulty level that you need to beat it on is hard, not insane, right? So you don't really have to play insane mode. I highly recommend not doing it unless you have a division of a group of friends to actually like strategize with. If you did that weekly mission last week, it would give you a coupon, this spooky coupon, which gives you a discount on one of the three I think these are all tier 4 Halloween themed ships that I don't think are anything that's a must have. I would go with the Destroyer if you really wanted to spend the money, but none of them are must have. I think it's too much doubloons for those. But this week, it does give you a almost full-blown discount on any of the Halloween skins or the commanders that are in the store, right? So it's giving you a 4,999 discount, which would make any of these skins cost 1 doubloon, or any of the Halloween themed commanders would be 1 doubloon, right? So this week I was like, all right, it's worth playing through it because some of these camouflages, some of the skins are pretty cool, but a free paid commander, almost free, right? 1 doubloon, right? Is definitely worth it, right? So I'm not sure. So I did play through, but basically you could see here when you select the coupon, it's going to make the commander, $1, or one doubloon, right? So I'll probably pick one of these guys up. Let me know in the comments who you guys think is the best amongst the Halloween commanders, and that way people can kind of see. I have a couple of them from past years, from containers and stuff, but let me know what your guys' thoughts and feelings are here, right? But you can get to it either way. If you go into the store, you can get through it this way too, by picking the coupon next to the commander, right? And this is going to be only available once you complete the mission for this week. So this week, I would say, is probably the one that's worth doing. And then, of course, if you completed it last week, you'll still have the coupon through this update, I believe. But now let's talk strategy for each of these ships, because people are definitely still doing it wrong. And the Destroyer is absolutely the most misplayed one here, mostly because people aren't using their consumables. This Ghost Cloak perk, this reloads, this cools down in 10 seconds, and this is what heals you as a Destroyer. You should be using this any second you get in trouble. You should be tripping this, and then you go invisible, so enemies will stop shooting at you, and you will heal. I've seen so many players out way too close to the enemy ships, and then they're not using this appropriately. They just try to muscle it out, and you're gonna die, especially on the higher difficulty levels. The engine boost, right? I'm using that most of the time, not as important, but I'm using it most of the time if I'm far away from enemies and I need to get back into position to start doing damage to people again, right? To start doing damage to enemy ships. The reload booster, I'm using it almost every time it's available, right? Send my torpedoes, then hit the reload booster, send them again, right? You need to be dumping torpedoes almost constantly as the destroyer player. So we'll do, for our example this week, we'll do destroyer, some destroyer gameplay. This is how I've outfitted it, right? So hit pause here and you can mimic mine if you want. I think there's a little bit of wiggle room here to kind of go with, what you would, if you have a little bit of a playstyle preference, but reload time on torpedoes, I think is a must because that's your main armament and that's what you need to be sending all the time, right? So second row, I think that's an absolute must. Torpedo damage, that would be my opinion there. You can increase the speed, but that's just the speed of the torpedoes. That's not increasing your reload. It's not doesn't give you the ability to send more, right? They just go a little faster. The AI ships aren't that hard to hit. So yeah, and then this one here, ship launch torpedo damage if your ship is not spotted when your torpedoes are launched, right? So that's more torp damage there. I don't go with this Speedy Strikes one because that requires you to try and be full blown, full speed while you're constantly around the map, and sometimes that can put you out of position. And then, of course, Legendary, right? And you can rank these commanders up so quickly, it only takes a few games to get a commander ranked fully up. Blazing Dread cruisers are a little bit tougher, or well, should be. Like, people are dying in destroyers. But this anti-guidance system almost works the same way as your cloak with the destroyer, where basically enemies will still shoot at you, but they're almost always missing. They're just bullets flying everywhere. For these apps, so use it when you got it. Use the consumables. People aren't using their consumables enough. They're infinite amount and they reload quickly, right? Fiery explosion. I'm using this one as opposed to the healing shells. The thing with this one that I think people don't realize is it works when other people create fires on enemy ships as well, not just fires that you create. So having one cruiser out there, if you see a cruiser on your team and you notice they're using that perk, absolutely try and trigger fires, right? Especially if you're the destroyer. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. I think you could go sonar or radar here, either one. I was using radar, but sonar is going to be good for picking up torpedoes, right? So I'm like, oh, I'll switch it. We'll see how it goes, right? But yeah, but back to the healing shells, right? If you find yourself dying, right, like use the healing shells, right? But what I do with the cruiser is, if I use the fire explosion perk, and then I'm constantly trying to trigger as many fires as you can, then trip that, right? Use it, because it comes back quickly. And then this is how I have the commander, kind of set up, right? I've built into the HE shells, full-blown damage build, right, on these, right? Reload, fire chance, everything you got, right? But yeah, if I find myself in trouble while using the fire explosion perk, you don't have a way to automatically heal yourself as the cruiser then if you're using that one. So then in those cases, I will use one of the blessing things that you get. You get 3 of them throughout, right? I'll use one of those to heal myself if I need it, right? But otherwise, we try to go full blown damage. For the battleship, right, you have a way to heal yourself, and it's this shield. This shield heals you, right? So the other thing to look out for when using this is look for your teammates and see if any of them are in trouble. And if, especially destroyers being stupid, not playing correctly, and being being too close to enemies and losing health, trip your shield to save them, right? Like everyone sucks at this. You're the one that's responsible for pulling, right? Like if you're going in solo queuing like I've been doing, you're gonna have to do some carrying, right? Shockwave, people don't use this enough. The reload time on it is 60 seconds. It just destroys any. It does damage to any ship that's close to you, or the radius is pretty big, right? And it also disables any torpedoes, right? So this is how I've built out the battleship. I think there's a little bit more wiggle room here for this, but I went this perk here for faster reload. I think is really a good idea. Um, but you do you, right? And then battleship main battery shell grouping is what I picked here. But cooldown, I would not use ramming damage because that's going to waste a slot. It's so rare that you get the opportunity to ram somebody, and it doesn't really work on the boss. And then for the third row, you could pick whatever you want here. I went with the secondary battery buff here because you are almost always in range of firing range for your secondaries, and they tend to trigger fires, in which case, if you've got a cruiser player using the fiery explosion perk, they're gonna get you're giving your cruiser that buff from that, right? So I went with the secondary one there because they're almost always in use. You do kind of want to hang back a little bit as a battleship or a cruiser. You don't want to get yourself too far up and too far out of play. Just, like we'll see a little bit of it here. I think we lose, right? So we're on hard mode. Like I said, I don't think it's worth trying to get through on insane unless you've got a crew to go in with, because you want your one more Halloween crate, right? But you'll notice me firing my guns here. Let's talk strategy for the destroyer, because people are kind of bad at it. We have a shield from our battleship, right? We can see that down the bottom left. We have 100% shield from our battleship. So I started firing my guns because you actually want to occasionally draw fire from the enemies when you're playing as the destroyer. You don't want to be, you want to be smart about it. Don't get yourself, in the middle of a whole bunch of reds and then firing your guns and get yourself, into trouble, right? You'll go down pretty quick, especially at these higher difficulty levels. But you're going to notice I'm almost always constantly firing torpedoes. I try to keep myself in a position where I can constantly be firing torpedoes towards enemies. We use the reload booster right after firing our both racks of torpedoes, so then we could fire both of them again instantly. I'm going to shoot my guns here. Like, I noticed my other destroyer is way too close up to the boss ship. So I'm like, hey, we can help draw some fire. We can try and trigger fires, right? We're using HE shells. We're going to try and trigger fires when we can, because there is somebody on my teammates are using a cruiser with the fiery explosion perk, right? So we're helping them do damage, which is helping the whole team overall, right? But notice how many torpedoes we've got out in the water. We're constantly sending these things. For the most part, right? Reload booster again, because it was available. Send torpedoes first. When it becomes available, wait till you're fully loaded, send torpedoes, then hit the reload booster, then send them again. I got myself in a little bit of trouble there. I took some fire, so what I did is I stopped firing my guns, stopped firing my torpedoes, and hit my cloak/heal, right? And so you can, it's an instant get out of trouble free plus healing consumable, and people aren't using it enough. Well, we're outside of our 3.8 kilometer detection range. We don't have anybody within that, so we can start firing our torpedoes again, right? If you were still in trouble and you were too close to enemies where they would spot you, you want to keep it going. Don't, while your heal cloak, consumable is running, don't fire guns, don't fire torpedoes, because that instantly stops it from working, right? So we get into trouble, we're going to trigger it. 10-second cooldown. If you can't survive for 10 seconds, you're doing something wrong here, right? So, yeah, so I got in a little bit of trouble. I need some healing. I stopped firing my torpedoes. I stopped firing my guns. And I tripped my cloak so that it's healing me. And then we'll fire, we're outside of our detection range now, so it's safe to start firing torpedoes again, right? So occasionally you do want to be smart about it, but draw fire away from, draw fire from the enemies by shooting your guns every once in a while. And then when you do get into trouble, use that cloak, because it's a 10-second cooldown. You can survive for 10 seconds. I believe in you. So just don't be in the middle of all the enemies, right? That's the kind of the biggest thing here. Right, but you can see, right, I'm trying to divide my attention between the mob and, and the bosses, right? The waves coming in. Once you play a few of these, you get the idea of the pattern, right? The boss takes pretty much the same route every time. The waves of enemies spawn pretty much at the same place and take the same path every time, right? And then I thought my destroyer was over here and going to finish off this the boss here, but he doesn't. We're in a little bit of trouble here. So what we're gonna do, right? You try and use the select boxes button, right, every time a blessing comes up, and I save the blessings until we get closer to the end here, right? So I'm gonna try and use it, right? So now you gotta hold it, and then now I can use 2 of them at once here, and I always pick the offensive ones unless I really need it. Because now we're going to get way faster reload on the torps. We're going to use the reload booster still when it's available. and they're, what was it, they were going to do more damage or something here, right? So I'm trying to finish off the boss because he's on his final loop around where he's going to go close to the ally ship that we're supposed to be guarding, right? So I'm just unloading and dumping everything on him to try and get rid of him. And then we'll still have a little bit of time left on these blessings. Once you get to this point where you kill the boss, absolutely trigger all of your blessings if you still have any left, because they last 120 seconds and you only need the ship to survive for 120 seconds, right? So yeah, so I tripped the last one that we just got from killing the boss, and we're just going to unload. Now we do want to pay attention to the mini-map. It is nice to be somewhat close to the ship that you're supposed to be protecting once the boss is killed, because he's going to start moving and it's not smart. They're not smart about where they go. So I'm trying to already kind of eyeball up which way I need to start making my way over there, because he's going the other way, right? So I need to go in the direction of where my allied ship is that I'm supposed to be protecting. It's the cruiser this time, which is always a little bit harder to keep alive because, well, he gets spotted sooner and doesn't have a lot of health. The destroyer is also kind of tough because he moves around pretty quick, and you got to kind of, pay attention to where he's going, right? So I sent as many torpedoes as I could to these other, spawn, enemy mobs or, that are on the way here, while I'm on my way to try and get to this cruiser to defend him. So we're seeing which ships are closest to him, and I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to fire my guns to try and draw some fire, not only away from my allies, but away from this ship that we're supposed to be defending. And of course, we're using the torp reload booster every second it becomes available. And then did we trigger fire? Well, the cruiser triggered the fires, right? But he's using that perk where it's consuming all the fires and doing instant damage. So we've got enough torpedoes on this guy, right, to be able to finish him off. We should be able to get this cruiser as well, and then that should be enough time for us to get the win here, right? But that's how you do it. That's kind of how you play as the destroyer. You want to be using your consumables. People aren't, especially that heal, right? That's an instant get out of jail free, get out of trouble free instantly. No matter how close you are to enemies, you can trip that and just stop firing your guns and torpedoes and move away, reposition, right? And then, stay alive to fight another day, right? But that's going to be our video for the day, guys. Let me know in the comments, like I said, who you think the better of the Halloween commanders are, please. And then please do subscribe. That does help me out quite a bit. As always, special thanks to channel members that are supporting me. Subscription is free, right? If you want to subscribe, please do subscribe. But if you're interested in helping me out a little bit more, check out the members section. And I try to do Legends videos every day. So we'll see you guys again tomorrow. Thanks again.